consultants category in the various levels. We have been also able to provide opportunity to some of you as empaneled phase faculty and have been able to offer you some training programs across the country. We have been able to also provide opportunity to present in other CII programs and events. Also proposed select nominations to FSSAI as technical panel experts and national resource persons of FOSTAC, which is the latest food safety training and certification scheme introduced by FSSAI. We have been able to nominate some of you uh, based, again, as I said, on the criteria that I mentioned above, as trainers, as master trainers, and we have been able to, offer the train the trainer programs to them. We've already completed 3 such train the trainer program in Bangalore, Delhi, as well as Mumbai. And these trainers who have, there was a small little exam, and those who have qualified in this is now uh, um, acknowledged as FSSAI's nationally recognized trainers for FPOs. Last and not the least is that independent consultants are being provided rewarding growth opportunities by offering them, by giving them an opportunity to do multi-location units to become a calibrator assessor for the CII Food Safety Award. And the independent consultants, that is not the industry, those who are, in the, as part of the industry professionals. Independent consultants, they are offered an honorarium per assessment. Now comes the future direction for assessors. We are in the process of introducing a criteria for assessors, which is called the Continuous Professional Development System. This is a global system which is utilized by the certification bodies to maintain the registration status of already qualified and registered auditors. It comprises basically uh, uh, the basically taking the training, on food safety on a continuous basis. Also joining in assessments, that is actually, being an assessor and participating in the assessment. So that is how the continuous professional log would be maintained by each assessor. And based on that, award assessments would be allocated in the forthcoming assessments. So this criteria is under development, and award assessments would be part of the mandatory requirements. Participating in award assessments would be part of the mandatory requirements for maintaining CPT logs. The implication is like this, that anyone who has a discontinuity in the award assessments, that is, they are not able to participate, say, for continually for 2 years, will have to take a retraining, absolutely afresh, on the CII Food Safety Award Assessor training of 2 days. Glimpses of the award. Since 2010, we have risen by more than 10 folds in having a pool of trained assessors. On the number of applicants, that is the percentage growth of the applicants, it's also gone up to almost 10 folds since 2010. We are happy to say that the contribution to the growth of the participation of applicants has been mostly in the small and medium sector, which was our vision. The levels of performance in the award remains the same. It is still the award trophy for outstanding performance, which is the highest level of recognition, and this is only one per sector, per category, per size. The next comes the certificates, which is the significant achievement for food safety, strong commitment to food safety, strong commitment to GHP, GMP, GWP or GAP, and also the letter of appreciation for commendable efforts in food safety. And this can be more than one. Just to drive home the point that this particular award evaluation is inclusive of the entire food chain stakeholders. This is how our awards committee and a jury panel is constituted. We have Mr. Ravi Mathur from the Ministry of Commerce. He's the CEO, GS1. We have Professor Ram Rajashekharan, Director, CFTRI, Mysore. Mr. Hariman Bhingal, Executive Director of Vinta Labs, and Dr. Uttam Chatterjee, CEO, TPM Consulting Company. Along with, and on the right-hand side, you see our awards committee members who are our office bearers of CII in the food committee, the cold chain committee, and others. The award excellence model, by and large, it remains the same. However, on suggestions from the jury, we have included the sustainability angle in the change management initiatives. So there is a little difference, in what you had as a checkpoint in your section D4. So as well as D1, that is the enablers on change management initiative, and the awards and accolades, it now includes a line on sustainability. We are proud to say that on the sectors and the criteria, we have been able to introduce 3 more new models this year. And you will see that this is of a different color. The peach color that you see here is on primary production dairy, has been introduced this year. This is based on Global Gap dairy. Primary production organic for fruit, vegetables and cereals, which is criteria number 9, and manufacturing organic, criteria number 10. What we have to remember is that we say for the organic sectors, we are not really going and checking out the organic part of it. That we will take as a self-declaration and as a certificate, and the checkpoints are mainly from Global Gap. It's based on Global Gap along with the self-declaration on organic primary production. So if you see the last 3 rows, primary production dairy, primary production organic, manufacturing organic, and if you see the basis of criteria, you will find that we have also clearly outlined the basis based on which these models have been prepared. So now we actually have 10 criteria. I will just explain the 6A. You must be wondering why criteria number 7 is missing. 6A will actually become 7. 6A is on food packaging. So since the mailers had gone out, in the beginning of the year, and we had called food packaging 6A, number 6A criteria, we didn't change it this year. Next year it is going to change. There is another big change which is upcoming. It is the model will also undergo a huge change within the next 1.5 years because ISO 22000 has been revised. And CII being the first mover in all food safety initiatives, even if it is in the draft stage, we will start incorporating and modifying our model as per the ISO 22000 revisions that have taken place. However, this year, the model is still like last year. So this is what I have just explained on dairy primary, what was the basis of the criteria, organic manufacturing, the basis of the criteria, which is self-declaration and third-party certification to organic, manufacturing criteria 3, and aspects of purchasing, labeling and cross-contamination included in the checkpoints. For organic primary produced fruits and vegetables, once again, it is self-declaration by the company on its organic certification. the social compliance, the prerequisites and the sector-specific and the change management initiatives is based on Global Gap fruits and vegetables. Now we bring our attention to the already existing criteria that we had. Like last year, in your assessment format, you will find some yellow highlights. These yellow highlights are those points where the jury gives a lot of priority, and hence it is important for you all to list down the a little more details and do these sections, give these sections a little more priority than the others when you do the assessment, because it has been pointed out to us that these are some of the minimum requirements that a company has to fulfill with respect to majority if they are to qualify for the awards. So the scoring remains the same as last year. Even the scoring, the subsection scoring is also the same as last year. Now, just to make the assessment meaningful, a lot of you have already been doing it, but prior information on the following 7-8 slides will make the assessment simpler and more meaningful. So while we have been saying these in trainings and also in the refresher program, we thought that we will put it down in the slides, for you to bring more attention, more focus on these points. So it is important that you collect this information before you go to the site. During email communication before the site visit, the senior assessor must ensure that sector-specific format is filled in the application document basis the process flow diagram. So the process flow diagram is very important, as well as a sector-specific table format, which we will show later in the forthcoming slides. Also, you as a team member, if you're not a senior assessor, please ask for these kind of information, and you can discuss with the senior assessor to facilitate these out from the applicant companies. The improvement list format, the list of result parameters in the application document format, and if not, request that trend data for results must be submitted during opening meeting. Sometimes you will find that the applicants are a little shy of presenting their data to the assessors before coming to the site. In that case, it is fine. Please ask them to keep it ready, and you all should be able to access it right at the opening meeting itself. Assessors must insert results in the appropriate checkpoint findings, regulatory list in the application document format, and request for submission during the site visit. See, what happens is that most of the, even now, we find some assessment reports are only talking about the procedures, that a procedure is there, this procedure talks about this. So it's basically, as you know by now, it is only, the findings are only mentioning the enabler part of it, that is the process, etc. But it does not, mention the linked results. Whereas a few linked results in that finding section would enrich and make the justification for your scoring much more stronger. Also, a homework is required on the sector-specific practices. On the sector-specific practices, if you can, get applicant company to fill in a table like this, if you offer them, if you provide, this table is provided in the application document, but please insist that they fill this up process-wise. What is the technology and the equipment? What is the material of construction? What is the mistake grouping for safety quality? What are the instrumentation and control measures do they have? Instrumentation and controls do they have? Also, along with it, what is their primary residue control? See, primary residue control would mean that, before purchase, if someone is making potato chips, what kind of control do they have on the potato farming? The potatoes that they buy. If they are doing a tomato ketchup, what kind of, control do they have on the tomatoes itself? So this is we find a lot of, global best practices which some of the companies are already following. going and working hand in hand with their farmers, training them, allocating resources, providing them with resources of, trainers from agricultural university, providing them with the approved pesticides, fertilizers, etc. So these kind of information is very important for primary residue control. Also maintenance of air quality and environment pathogen monitoring, water treatment technology, ETP and others. Now, we have been trying for this for a very long time, sector-specific guidance documents. So now we have under the aegis of SHIPS, which is CII-HUL Initiative on Food Safety Sciences, which was launched in 2016 to drive science behind food safety. We now have uploaded the following sector-specific guidance documents, that is bakery, refined edible oils and fats, ghee, frozen meat, frozen desserts, jam, jellies, marmalade. This is the website. You will find these document drafts are uploaded. These are also have been submitted to FSSAI, and the CEO FSSAI has personally congratulated us on the work that has been done. So we are going on adding, these sector-specific guidance documents over time. So please do access this, and if it is needed by you, it would be great. And also, please provide us feedback to improve them further. We would like a very participative process on this. Now comes a list of improvements related to food safety and change management initiative projects in the last 3 to 5 years. So this also provides them with a template on what is that improvement activities, the list of improvement activities. What was the project dates? What are the team members involved? Benefits obtained. Now, if the company, if the applicant unit works on these points from beforehand, you will have some ready-made data on which you can do a verification activity and also put these information in your feedback report. And that is going to, and if you can put it in the right relevant sections, it's going to be a really rich report, which also, the applicant companies possibly were not relating it, to the individual checkpoints. I think this, all of you know, this is an old, template that we were circulating, that, what kind of trend results can you ask for? So while we have put it in the application document, you would need to follow this up. The regulatory excellence points are the same as last year. So this also asks them to fill it up beforehand. It's part of the application document. The environmental impact, we've been using this for the last 4 years. This also needs to be filled up if applicable. Now comes the 4-step interview to capture data. Now assessors, you are going there basically, and you have to capture, first represent the unit to the next stage of evaluator. So you are not really going there to, find faults with them. You are there to represent to whom? Who is your next evaluator? Your next evaluator is the reviewer and the calibrator who has not seen the site but is comparing your report to other similar, sectoral units and seeing, okay, it's the same kind of situation, getting the same kind of scores. So there is a very rigorous review process, within us. Someone who devotes a lot of time, one or a team who devotes a lot of time to look at it. So one is that we try and put a sector-specific calibrator in each of the sectors that have applied. In the small and medium and large. So a large, say, hotels and restaurants will have one calibrator, whereas hotels and restaurants, small and medium, will have another calibrator. So, we kind of divide the work like this. So then we try to keep one common thread, in each of these sectors, so that there is also a good comparison, between because a variation is expected. Every team is different. A variation of 10% is allowed. So how do we understand who is better than the other? Our calibrators come to our rescue. Okay, come to the second point. Start by inquiring on their strengths for the particular checkpoint. If you are speaking about purchasing, ask them questions on purchasing, how they deal with their, the ones that they purchase from, especially the fruits and vegetable suppliers. So, once you start talking about the trends, now supposing they say that we do a lot of, interactive activities. Now when you tell them that, okay, what are these interactive activities? How often do you do it? So when you probe further, you will find, slowly what kind of OFIs emerge. And OFI could be in a basic stage, it could be in a competitive stage, advanced stage, actually global world-class stage. So an OFI, it that is how you will understand, which level of maturity they are. So please follow this method of capturing the data. As we know, again at the cost of repetition, we are saying that your findings should include results as well as enablers. Most of the time, the outcome is left out. The results part of it is left out by assessors in the report. Most of the time, the extent of deployment, the review systems, these are left out by the assessor also. When they are looking at various processes and approaches. Now, guidelines to assess enablers are, see, in the enablers, there are three main elements. An enabler is composed of approach, of deployment, of regular measurement of the effectiveness. So give it a, as I say, a horizontal look and a vertical look. So in the horizontal look, you are looking at actually the various, horizontal processes that are there. That is, every department, every processes. And on a vertical look, you see right from the top management to the grassroots level, how they are, addressing it. So many a time we find, a company which is an MNC having multi-location units. They will have a standard manual, standard practices. All right. So while their approach may be the same, where they would differ would be the deployment. And when you look at deployment, what all do you look at? Not only, whether the approach is implemented and deployed in all the relevant processes, whether it is down the line. Also look at what is their knowledge on that. What is the culture? What is their knowledge? Are they practicing it? Would they know what to do if things are violated? So this is what we said. When you are looking at any, like for probing into any strengths with which you can find out the OFIs, you first ask about the 5W and 1H. Check the awareness of the process among all the employees concerned. Check the deployment across functions and the relevant levels of people. And then you look at target strengths, benchmark results to demonstrate the effectiveness. Now we come to the how do we assess the results part of it. I think we have all, again at the cost of repetition, I'm saying you look at targets, whether they are stretched or not, what are the trends, comparison with best-in-class benchmarking, and results, whether the results are covering all the relevant areas. Of course, the question that I anticipate you will ask is that, okay, how do we compare with the best-in-class? Because sometimes data is not available. I agree with you, but there is a way this can be done. Look at this slide. See, you can understand the maturity of benchmarking of an organization when the organization is actually tracking data. Data on what? Comparing with other units of the same organization, and it shows evidence of achievement. See, I can say I stood first, but then do I know what is the evidence I provide that yes, I got 98.5 in in the ICSE results, and this is the way it has been tracked. The second person got this, the third person got this, and it's all out there in the results. So the company also has to track it, that how they compare with other units. So this is also a kind of a benchmarking. See the next level of benchmarking, the maturity is going up. Number 2 says when they are comparing within the Indian industry and shows evidence of achievement. What does this mean? It means they've gone outside their own. They first compared with their own organization, then they're going outside their own organization to compare, and they're showing, yes, these are my competitors. See, we've done a third party assessment, and this is where we stand on these particular services, products, quality, food safety, etc. Now comes the best level of benchmarking, where They are able to show comparisons with global benchmarks. So assessors, uh, this is one way of doing a maturity assessment on benchmarking. Examples of results linked to subsections. I know I had been saying this, that I gave you a list of the results that you have that can be asked, that we send to the companies, and then we say link it up to the subsections. This year we felt that let us give you a ready reckoner. So the ready reckoner is like this, where you have the checkpoint on equipment suitability and maintenance. Put down results of breakdown, overall equipment effectiveness, MTBR, MTPF, as is applicable and as is available. That is what you can ask them first, and you can tell them also that everything has to be transparent. You have to tell them that yes, in this particular sector, we would like to put down these data and show, where you are. So if you give us this data, we'll put it in there. So if the company gives you this, just fit in these, trend results in a small little table, in that particular section findings. For customer satisfaction, there is a checkpoint on customer satisfaction. So you put the customer satisfaction indices, that they have achieved over the last 3 years. Now, I'm not saying last 3 years, always it's the last 3 years. Look at their cycle, which is relevant to them. If it's a bread manufacturing, 3 years doesn't make sense. It may be just 1 quarter. 3 quarters, that's it. So you try and find out what you want to put, which period, which duration you want to put, as per, what is applicable to them. And then you can put down segmented customer complaints. What does it mean? Maybe a food safety, they said food safety index has improved from this to this. But then there should be a probing question to say that, okay, in the food safety index, what were the parameters, what were the elements that were concerned, that were, constituting the food safety index? Were there some quality parameters? You can then segregate that out, and then you can zero in, and you can make an inference that yes, these are, this is going to help us to decide on the score or the maturity level of the organization. For your rework checkpoint, reduction of rework percent, recheck, scrap percent, any Kaizen projects that they have done, if you list down these points, it would be good. Improvement in FSMS. Put down the FSMS improvement project examples, just one line. It doesn't have to be big, don't make that, a huge long information table. You just give the relevant information on this, because your third column, which is yes, no, not applicable partly, that tells you about the compliance part of it. You don't have to worry about that. You must answer that, and it tells us yes. On the compliance part, they are partly, yes means totally compliant. On the right, on the finding side, it should be, information about the maturity, linked information about the maturity. That is how you should look at it. Please don't put on, yes, they've got a good procedure, this is the procedure number. We don't want any procedure number in the findings. Okay, process control, work in process, test results, extent of compliance, finished good test results. So this is what you put in. In purchasing, supplier reject, rework percentage trends, no stock out situations. If you can give us, results on this, wonderful. For warehousing and storage, shelf life expiry product, inventory turnover ratio, no stock out situations. For corrective actions, you can give improvement from projects, employee participation percentage, recurring non-compliances. Utilities, results of air pathogen monitoring, water reports, LUX. Reward and recognition. List out the names of innovative reward and recognition schemes for all levels of employees, areas covered, number of recognitions awarded, etc. So for assessing and reporting corrective actions, it's important that you look at these 5 parameters. One is that, are they using root cause, like YY analysis? The moment you ask them about YY analysis, systematic problem solving, see how many people know about it and how many are applying it. Whether mistake proofing of the solution and revised SOP is there, whether there has been training of the people, whether it has prevented recurrence, examples of sustainable improvements through corrective actions. Okay, so now we come to the award assessment process. I think all of you are clear about how the award assessment takes place. We've covered this in our training programs also. The key dates were that, May 31st, we had extended the date to May 31st. By special request, some have asked for June. So we are still having, a few more applications trickling in. Your submission of the application document should be within 7 days of the completion of the site visit. Your site visits must be completed by August 31st. The awards in the jury committee meeting will happen during October end and early November. We can't push it anymore because by December first week, we will have to announce the results. So, and we dispatch the report within 10 days of awards night. Now, what do you expect from us? The email communications from CII if you are selected as an assessor. So the first round, the first round is still in the process. We are calling it the first communication, second communication, there's a third communication. These are the 3 key communications any selected assessor, confirmed assessor would receive. So the first communication was sent out yesterday. Of course, there are still some more pending. We've just started doing that. And here, this is the preliminary team. We sent it out to the assessors and it's written on top in red, first communication. Please keep a note of that word, first communication. Now, assessors are asked whether their contact addresses are okay, whether they are fine, give us your confirmation. Is there a conflict of interest? So I would request you all to please go through that mail very well. There are many important information given there, and we also ask you to reply to all, because you see, while the mail goes from me, there are other people who are working on it who would track whether you have updated your database, whether you want a correction, etc. So please, I request you to please do a reply to all. We've mentioned it and we've highlighted also. But unfortunately, some of you are just writing to me. I am not available. I'm out doing programs. I'm traveling a lot, so it will get left out. If you just write to me, please do a reply to all. It will get taken care of. Okay. After the preliminary, after we get the information, we've said that the last date for you giving the confirmation is 8th June. By 8th June, we will be able to make out how to form the the team with confirmed team members, and soon after that you will receive a second communication. So please note that it's an identified mail, second communication written in red right on top. So after this, after we get a confirmation of the senior assessor and partly on the team, senior assessor confirmation is a must. We communicate to the applicant that this is a senior assessor who has confirmed. The third communication, now there may still be some reshuffling going on, within the team, because someone says, okay, I don't think I would be able to part of this because some dates are not matching. So, initial, there's a lot of, to and fro emails going on. So what we do is that once a senior assessor is confirmed, we send the third communication, which comprises the application document, opening meeting, assessment format, etc. to the senior assessor. And he will share it. He will just forward it to his team, to his final confirmed team, after the site visit dates are fixed up. As we said, interim, there may be several communications. So please read your attachments. Only important information is given there for you to follow. So if you read the attachments and the mail properly once, I'm sure you'll get all the information, and after that you can also write to me or the team group, which is there in the email copy. Now I keep getting soon after the first communication, there are quite a few of you who are writing to me saying that when is the tentative date? I can then confirm to you. But I think, as we also discussed in the training, that CII has just started to send out the first communication to assessors on 1st June, that is yesterday. Now we are in the process of receiving acceptance, regrets, other feedback, like conflicts of interest, etc. These have started to come in. Considering all this, we will make a confirmed, we will identify the confirmed team members, and basis feedback from the assessors, the team will be modified accordingly. It is only then that I can communicate on the through the second communication, the more or less confirmed team members. It is the team members who decide on the dates of site visits. CII has nothing to do with it. We don't interfere in that process. What we have done is that we have given you a broad period that from June to 31st August, we give you a flexibility. Please finish your assessment within that. So the confirmed team members must discuss within themselves with the senior assessor. The senior assessor is a one-point contact, with the applicant company until the site visit dates are fixed. So you have to inform the senior assessor. He's also in discussion with you all. Here, the senior assessor coordinates with the applicant company. They also have to say yes to those dates. I know it's a very difficult process. Let me tell you, it's not an easy process at all, this particular coordination. But you'll have to give this a little bit of time. It's only then, that you can decide when is the dates, and only after that you will receive the third communication. Now comes the reporting of findings for each checkpoint and executive summary. You can report in bullet points, which have to be self-explanatory, or you can report textually. You must add some result trends in your finding wherever applicable to justify the scores. This is what is important. So the more textual you write, the more mistakes there will be. As you know, this is a national level report. The report does not only have to make a lot of sense, it also has to be grammatically correct. Spellings should be correct. I'm sorry to say, sometimes we find so much of mistakes, in the articulation. We cannot submit a report like that. Okay, and please remember, your names are all there, in the report. So there's a lot of back-end work sometimes we have to do, but definitely report writing is part of the performance evaluation of the assessors also. We've just included two, more or less good reports, on how to write, say, on purchasing. Just have a look at it. I'm not going to go through it, and the yellow highlights are some of the OFIs that have been, highlighted here. So you can make reports this way, or you can put in bullet points, not a problem. In this report format, if you see, first one is serial number, second one is a checkpoint that we provide. The third column is the yes, no, not applicable partly, which is going to tell you about the compliance levels. This yes, yes, yes means only the compliance. So fine, done. You don't have to repeat left-hand side and put on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, it is all additional material, additional information to justify the scores. Similarly, we've given you one on product information consumer awareness, which is mostly on the labels, etc. Now for the code of conduct to be followed by senior assessors and assessors, appropriate dress code, respect for the applicant organization's culture, no gifts from the applicant's company, no request for any favors outside the logistics requirement pertaining to the site visit, and it is mandatory to use the evenings for processing the consensus feedback reporting and scoring. Why are we seeing the consensus feedback reporting? Because unless you start working in the evenings and preparing your reports from, the first day of assessment and the second day of assessment, you cannot do a proper consensus meeting. Please remember, the consensus meeting is not just for doing a scoring, but also justifying to the next level of assessors that, evaluators, that you have done a good job of it. And the applicant company should also find your report value adding. Okay. Another point is that, yes, senior assessor discusses with the teams, arrives at a suitable set of dates, prepares a tentative plan, requests for guide, familiarizes himself with the assessment format. So it's not only a senior assessor. When you receive the assessment format, please try that out, please try that out in your laptop. Also carry reference standards, etc. And there is sometimes we do make the previous year's findings, we make it accessible to the senior assessor. It is as per requirement by the jury, that a comparative, sometimes for repeat applications, the jury specifically asks on what is the improvement that they have shown, specifically on the things that you had pointed out last year. So it is sometimes shared with the senior assessor. Everybody doesn't have access to it. It is important that no one copy pastes from that report. Uh, it really can be a huge embarrassment for the team and for CII if a previous report is copy pasted. The key attributes of a senior assessor, another thing that you have to remember is that no matter what your findings, never ridicule the assessee or the unit. Do not be arrogant. Do not be judgmental. Be very polite and courteous and sensitive to the applicant's queries, needs and challenges. Do not copy classified information, that is menus, recipes, etc. There should be no such complaints that we should receive, CII should receive from companies on these aspects. The site visit for assessment. Now, I think most of you have already, been to site visits. For the new ones, basically this is a verification of what you see in the application document, especially on those tables and formats. Now, there should be a there are 2 points that we put in red. One is that there should be the highest focus on verification of PRP implementation practices and sector-specific good manufacturing practices and awareness of food handlers. While mandatory documentation is important, it should not be the key focus of verifications on site. Last year, we have received some, feedback from applicants saying that the assessors were spending most of their time in the conference room looking at documents only. Please don't be seen as looking at documentations only. We are really not doing that. We are going. I mean, as you see, the first red bullet point focuses on verification of PRP implementation, sector-specific good practices, and awareness of food handlers. For this, you will have to be on the floor. The other points I think I've already mentioned. Strengths and opportunities for improvements must be mentioned. And as you know, for any organization unit which is not receiving a 90%, it will have to be, there has to be some OFI to justify it. Even with an 85%, which is the highest advanced score in the maturity level, there must be an OFI of a global, benchmark possibly, of a global best practice level. But it has, otherwise it is not justified. Your scores are not justified. Another point on the scoring is that no one should be scored 0, no one should be scored 100. Okay, no one deserves 0. Otherwise they would not have been where they are today and not have applied for it. Something is always there, even if it is ad hoc. And no one really gets 0 because this is a maturity assessment. No one achieves perfection. The bar of perfection is always moving ahead. Now for the roles of the senior assessor, he is basically responsible for the whole team. He is the one who establishes the first contact with the assessor team. He is the one who guides the whole team, into doing a good reporting, helping them to, do the good, an appropriate consensus meeting, etc. He leads the opening and the closing meeting. He facilitates the consensus meeting. He ensures appropriateness of articulated findings. He does the scoring of the scored summary in the consensus meeting along with the team, with the help of the team. He facilitates the executive summary in the consensus meeting. He shares the complete report with the team members just before leaving. Before leaving, whatever has been done, it must be shared with everybody. Even from CII, when we send the final feedback report, after all the calibrations and the reviews, we mark a copy to the team members because their names appear in the report. So and it should not, and this is all classified information, it should not be shared with anybody. Submission of the report has to be within 7 days. Interact with the calibrator as required and modify the report in discussion with the team members during the second phase of assessment. And mostly this is done by the senior assessor because after he comes back from the site. Then prepare the jury presentation if shortlisted. Make a presentation to the jury if shortlisted. Now for the assessor, he must carry a laptop, check whether the assessment format works, and the rest of it is, sharing the work. with the CASSR. For the opening meeting, we will share a PowerPoint presentation, which we will update. Every year we have been doing that for the last 3 years. So this year also we will update a PowerPoint presentation to be shared at the opening meeting with the applicant company. It will be shared with all of you. We do it through the third communication. We'll share it with the CIS Senior Assessor and he will share it back with you all. I think you all know that there is an appeal system. Every kind of conduct gets reported to us, through confidential phone calls. So in a way, we get to know if there are, any problems. Sometimes if they don't get answers, if the applicant company doesn't get any answers, they call us up and they seek a clarification. And some of the clarifications that have been sought are, on why are we being asked about, global benchmarks. We are complying to all kinds, because please remember, all applicants are not trained assessors. So they wouldn't really know about the maturity assessment. It's important for the senior assessor to talk a bit about the maturity assessment at the opening meeting itself. Now, on the presentation by the applicant company, request for a soft copy of the presentation that they make at the opening meeting for inclusion in the site visit as appropriate after verification. Request for best practices photos. Assessors must not take any photographs of GHP, GMP, mistake proofing, etc. of the applicant company. You can request the applicant company. You can show them that this is a best practice which we would like to show. It is up to you all whether you all want to provide us with a picture of this. But never insist on these if the applicant company is not comfortable doing it. Okay. Now, some of the frequently asked questions by the applicant. One of them is that, yes, we have international certifications. Why are we being asked about aspects where compliance is not a requirement? So that is the time you speak about maturity assessment. Sometimes they ask, why don't you share names, numbers of applicants you have received? Then you'll have to tell them that this is in the best interests of the industry. How is it in the best interest of the industry that supposing a company does not get any recognition even after, a good performance, because, getting a recognition means, they are also competing with other best practices companies. So if they don't get a recognition, if their names are known, if consumers and other industries get to know that they had participated, it may send out a wrong signal saying that, the company is producing unsafe food. Oh, they didn't get a recognition in food safety. So we don't want all that to happen. Please remember, we are guided by the industry not to share, the names and number of applicants. Sometimes, why not number of applications? Because it can be also derived, that who are the ones who applied, by the process of elimination, industry assessors, consumers could arrive at certain conclusions, certain perceptions that these were the companies which applied but did not get it. Talk about the confidentiality and these wrong signals to the customers. Another question that is generally asked is that we obtained a significant achievement last year or 2 years back, but we did everything of what was there in the report, all the OFIs that were there, we've done it, we've addressed it. How come we got a lower recognition last year, and or we didn't get a recognition at all? In that case, you will have to explain that the awards committee jury and the progressive participating industries are going on raising the bars every year. I mean, in comparison, possibly they did not get it, and also the bars are getting raised every year. The closing meeting is generally anything between 30 to 45. Yes, I've gone up to 1 hour also, because it's important we tell them all the OFIs, in the closing meeting. We should not come away, giving them an impression that they will get an award. Even if you see some very good practices, even if you've seen some good practices, there will be certain points where they are not global benchmarks. So you can point those OFIs out. You must point out all the OFIs that you see there. Okay, because remember that while we will take your recommendation also, we ask you to put it down. But sometimes, like the calibrator, the evaluators, the jury feel differently about the whole thing. They see it with a different perspective. There should be no PowerPoint presentations or any reports from assessor teams at this stage during the closing meeting. And scores are not to be mentioned at this stage. Moreover, it cannot even be mentioned because it is done before the consensus meeting, that is before the scoring. When you finalize the feedback report, it is important that you give almost about 10 to 12 hours on that day. I think we've done that calculation saying that, even if there are 50 checkpoints and you give them, give each of them 10 minutes to discuss after a almost perfect writing, the days before, it will also take, 500 minutes. So why that, 1 day is required to do a good consensus upgradation. You refine the findings with the in discussion with each other, and then also you will after that you'll have to do the scoring. Executive summary should also be finished that day itself, because the assessor should know what is going into the executive summary. It is not a compilation exercise. It's really a consensus exercise. That is the difference, that if the senior assessor took back everything and did an average, and from his mind, his perception, he makes an executive summary back off site, the whole purpose has been defeated. Okay, so restrict to about 3-4 pages, and this is read by the jury and the top management. So the broad contents have been provided. You can go through it. What I want to bring to your focus is that the team recommendation is a must. And for the team recommendation, we've said, do you think the company is suited for a award for our outstanding performance, etc. All the levels are written there. You just have to tick it off in discussion with the group. What the team feels, you have to tick that off. As we said, submission is within 7 days. Any unresolved opinions on scores difference of more than 10 and any justifications must also be communicated by the senior assessor to the CII. We've just enclosed a site visit program which we have been following, and as we said, another point, the walk around the plant should be not more than say maximum 1 hour, maximum 1 hour, 1.5 hours, not more than that, because the whole idea is to just see the process layout. After that, you will be going in there and asking detailed questions. It does not serve any purpose basically. After the, if you spend more time on it, you're wasting your precious time. So this is the site visit sample. This is how some typical allocations of work. So this time for large organizations, we have allocated 4. And for small and medium, we have allocated 3 assessors. Let us see what we have finally. So with this, we just want to bring to your attention the assessor team meeting, which is very important before you actually start the site visit. So it can be done during breakfast or in the car if your applicant company representative is not available. So please discuss these points on what is required to be done, what are the key issues, what all, how could it be approached, etc. Just do a briefing meeting within yourselves. There is a disclaimer that we will attach to your assessment report later. I think you've all seen that basically you should not ask for any laboratory tests to be done. You can't take samples. What we will do is that we will take all the laboratory test records, etc. from the company, and we will utilize that to do an assessment. Now, feedback and registration of assessors. It's important that for selection of assessors, this 2 days training course is important. Your performance, your exposure to ISO 20000, GFSI standards, and you have to be from your experience in the food industry, also whether you are qualified auditors and non-competitor organization. Please send your updated CVs in the specified template that Saurabh has been, sending to you. Please send it as soon as possible if you haven't yet sent it. And for independent assessors, there is an honorarium which we are providing as per the fee stipulated rates for every assessment that a unit that an independent assessor does. However, the first 2 has to be voluntary award assessments where the performance is evaluated as an assessor. So thank you very much, and any questions, you can write your questions in the question box, and I will answer, and please also, I think your name will also come in there, and I will answer it over the webinar. Yes, I'll just have a look at it if there are some questions already. I have a question here from Mr. Narayan Pradhan. He has asked, can we download those sector-specific guidance documents from the ship's website? Certainly, Mr. Pradhan, you can download them. Rajiv has said, I am sure we will get the presentation which we just saw today. Yes, Rajiv, we will get the presentation that you saw today. We will send it. We will send the link. Silky has asked, can you please give more details on primary residue control? Okay, see, primary residue control means, as I see, one example is like this. Supposing I'm making a jam, I'm making a pineapple jam, right? So for the pineapple jam, the unit has applied under manufacturing. So it is criteria 3 manufacturing. However, they purchase the pineapples, from somewhere. So if the unit can show that this purchase is made through through vendors or directly from the farms or through vendors who have a connect with the farmers, and with these farmers they have been able to work together, helping them with maybe resource people who are going and training them on maximum residue levels, use of approved pesticides, use of approved fertilizers. Also there is a control by the company, they provide them with this. So these kind of information are basically on the primary residue control. These are small little initiatives which help with the primary residue control. So this is what we were speaking about. So the better these processes are, the higher the maturity of the company. Mr. Raghu, can you elaborate? Mr. Nawale, Pratik Nawale has asked, can you elaborate dairy primary category? So for the dairy primary category, this is on the farms. We have used the global gap checklist mostly. We've adapted checkpoints from the global gap checklist. So the checklist is very detailed. Once you have a look at it, if you're allocated that, you can have a look at it, and it is quite self-explanatory. Then there is a question from Mr. Raghunath. Just a second. There is a question from Mr. Raghunath Samant. He has asked, will he be receiving any position report from the applicant organization before the assessment? Yes, Raghunath, that is what we spoke about, the application document. It will be sent to you. And, sometimes it's just they generally don't put too much information. Let me tell you from my last experience over the last 7 years is that the companies don't put too much of information in there. But it is better that, once you receive that report, ask them to, through the senior assessor, please request them to fill up the formats, the formats that I showed you today. Those formats are important to, it will give you information in a very, tabulated format, in a very focused manner on, on the information that you really require, like improvement projects, the mistake proofing, sector specific GMP, those kind of information. Okay. One of your slides mentioned that the site visit states will be finalized with the applicant company and then communicated to the team. I think I misunderstood that. The date should be finalized with the consensus of the team along with the applicant. Absolutely. The site visit dates are only finalized within the team. CII has nothing to do with it, within the team and the applicant company. So the senior assessor takes a lead role in doing that. Rajiv. Yes. Any other questions? This is, I have a question from Nitesh. Uh, Hi, Nitesh. Can we get some of the good feedback report to go through and how format can be filled? Better if this is category wise can be shared. It is, Nitesh, it is just not possible. We cannot share any feedback report. No company would say yes to it. So what we've done is that I think you were here in the training, I think 2 months, 1 month back or so. And there we had actually, mixed and matched a lot of, feedback findings from quite a few organizations, and we shared it as your exercise number E04, if you recall, and you will have to make do with that. No company will has allowed us to share these. Okay, right. Another question. Um, Raghunath Samant has asked, we have to write processes or record numbers verified during the assessment of the report? Never, never do that. We don't want you to waste time in writing down procedure numbers, record numbers, etc. First of all, what we want you to do is that you make an assessment of the maturity through the results, through the maturity of the enablers. I think we discussed that in details. Raghunath, please do go through your, the course material that you received a year back. I mean, I think you were there in 2015 or 2016. You were there in the course. Please do go through that. You will find that certainly not. We cannot give any. We don't want you to waste times on putting down record numbers and procedures numbers. It adds no value to the company. Anand says, it will be difficult to confirm the participation for assessment as there is no tentative dates allocated for assessment. Difficult to manage without tentative dates and week. Anand, you have been one of our very old assessors. How can we provide you with the tentative dates? We can provide you with the period, and it is there is a lot of flexibility. You need to fix up mutually convenient dates with the confirmed team members. That is why I introduced a slide like that this year. And then just have a look at that. I think that will be much more useful for you, and it's much more justifiable. CII should not give any dates because we don't know who these people are. We want to keep it flexible and more suitable, convenient. It should be convenient to the assessors as well as the applicant. And if we don't receive a confirmation, see, now we have a pool of about 368 assessors. We are really waiting. We will wait till the 8th, and we will have to give the next lot a chance, if we don't receive confirmation by then. Okay. Yes, there is this is Shubham Agarwal, who's again asked about the primary residue control. Can you explain it in the context of the bakery industry? In the bakery, what are the raw materials that are being used? Flour, okay. So if there is edible oils, so for that, where do you get the material from? And for the flour, if you're in touch with if the company has some kind of an interaction with the flour mills have an interaction with their primary producers, and there's a linkage, if you all work together to help, the flour units to implement. So that is how, I think it's a huge canvas, very difficult to say particularly what has to be done. Primary residue control means the raw material that you are using, how much of MRL control work the company is involved in. We know it is not possible up to, to a huge extent, but how much are they, involved in it? So like a company like a Metro Cash and Carry, supposing, they are working with the suppliers of apples and fruits and vegetables to ensure, that it is coming from, uh, I mean, less residue, where pesticide residues are controlled well. This would be an excellent global best practice. If they are working on traceability right up to the, the geographical indication part of it, it is a global best practice. So you will have to decide up to which level they are working on and decide which level of maturity they are in. From Mr. Anuj Chauhan, Anuj, you have asked, sustainability is added in CMI. It's a good initiative. However, last 3 to 5 years of work may or may not be there. Any guideline, please? Anuj, see, on this is again a maturity assessment. Supposing a company can show work for the last 1 year. So they are in the initial stages of maturity. If they can show for 2 years, they are in an advanced stage of maturity. If they can show for more than 3 years, they are, and the quality of the work is like that. They're in a global level. There is no non-conformance in our model, right, Anuj? So it is what you are seeing is that, okay, which level of maturity are they in? Please let me know whether I've answered your question. Okay. Another question. What is the specific difference from last year assessment criteria, Mukesh Gupta? Mr. Gupta, if you can just see you see the table 1. Okay, that is it. And only sustainability has been introduced in CM1. That is the key criteria that has been changed. And there are 3 new models which have been introduced this year. 8, 9, and 10. This is a change. Okay. So Mr. Raghunath Samant is asking, can we ask and verify lab reports of food products during the assessment? Certainly, yes. That is what you need to do. You have to verify the lab reports. Okay. What Amitav has said is that, Amitav Shrivastava, except criteria 3 and 10 having based on FSSC 22000, not ISO 22000, as other criteria is on ISO 20000. ISO 22000 and some catering practices has been are the basis for the for section 2, right? As well as section 6. I mean, sorry, criteria 2 and criteria 6. But FSSC is only for manufacturing, as we know. So the 2 manufacturing has FSSC 20000. Okay, fires. Please explain 5W1H. 5W1H is who, what, when, where, why, how. If you have an explanation of all this, you know that a company has a profound procedure basis. Okay, I have a Mr. Venkateshwara Reddy has asked, pellet manufacturers falling under which manufacturing sector? What pellets? I mean, please give me some more, See, basically what we've done is that this year, the food, we have gone by the food categories that has been, published by FSSAI during 2016. So based on the food categories, the sectors are changing slightly. And I think the company can also tell us, but which pellets you will have to let me know, Venkateshwara. Okay. There's another question by Mr. Fayaz Khan. He has asked, what does GWP mean? Good warehousing practices, Fayaz. Okay. Trupti has said, sometimes assessors have to leave the assessment due to urgent commitment during the site visit. Is it mandatory to extend the site visit day in that case by the senior assessor? First of all, this is a very bad practice if someone has to leave urgently, unless, there is a huge illness and a real emergency. So it is something which you have to, deal with the situation then, and very difficult to answer here, Trupti, that, what do we do? Do we extend a day? It would be a better idea to extend, a day in discussion with the company. But very difficult to answer here. Let's deal with the situation as it comes. Okay, Trupti? Mr. Reddy has asked, some of the plants have implemented PRPs